Welcome back to Drafting with Mark, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at doing this shape, which is actually a bent piece of metal. Now when I get to doing this in Inventor, if you're interested in learning anything about sheet metaling, that's where I'm going to show how to do this in Inventor. So we're going to be using sheet metal. But in this one, we're going to be doing this in AutoCAD, even the isometric. So sit back, relax, this is going to be a long video. I'm just kind of giving you that in the preview. Alright, so before we get started, I want to show you a little concept here. You can see that this radius here is sitting at 2, which means that what is this radius here, right? So a lot of people will assume that this radius is 2 and it applies to this one as well. Well, in actuality, it's going to be this radius plus whatever this thickness is, and you can see that the thickness is here set to 1. So the radius of this inside here is going to be 3, right? So when we get to doing that, you can either type in 3 or you can offset that and it's going to give you the exact same number. This becomes super important when we're starting to deal with the isometric up here, because remember, when we create those iso circles, we either need to have the diameter or the radius of that. So by figuring that out in the beginning here, that makes life so much simpler for us, right? Another thing that I don't know if I ever talked to you about them in a video is that when you see a dimension and it has parentheses beside it, that means that that dimension is a reference dimension, meaning that it's just there strictly as reference only. It's a guide to you, but you don't have to hold your drawing to that. The reason why it's on here and the reason why it's a reference dimension, because you can add the 8.5 plus the radius here, which is 7.5, and if you add both of those numbers together, that would give you your 16. All right, so I think that's enough on the setup part here. Let's go ahead and switch to AutoCAD and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off doing our normal housekeeping here. We'll go ahead and turn the grid off. I'm going to turn my ortho on, and then I'm going to verify which of my running O snaps that I have on. And if you've seen any of my videos before, you'll notice that these are exactly the same ones that I usually like to start with. All right, so now I'm going to start off by creating a 2D. Now keep in mind the 2D is going to go really quick and simple, because this is nothing more than just a two-dimensional shape or a bent plate. There's no complicated angles or anything of that nature. So once we draw this, it'll be simple and easy. The part that's going to kind of drive us a little bit crazy is when we get to the isometric, and that's going to be with those fillet corners on there. But for right now, let's go ahead and draw the 2D part of it. So I'm going to start off by creating a circle with the radius. So circle, center radius. Let's go ahead and click here. And the radius of this circle should be 7.5. I'm going to go ahead and create another circle with the radius right on the inside of this one. And it's going to have a radius of 6.5. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line. And I'm going to select this quadrant. Click here. Let's go down a distance of 8.5. And then I'll go to the left 8.5. Alright. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Or if you choose to, you can go ahead and mirror this. Alright, but I think I'm going to wait on that. Now that I think about it, I'm going to go ahead and finish this whole entire side here, and then I think it'll be a lot easier for us just to mirror that in one step. Alright, so let's take a look at just dealing with this side. Let's go ahead and offset our distance, which is 1. So offset 1. Go ahead and select this line here, and I'm just going to offset both of these lines going to the inside, right? Now this is what I was telling you here in the preview, is that I can go ahead and do this fillet here. So I'll go to fillet, radius, and then I'll set the radius to 2. And I'll just go ahead and put a fillet here. Now if I continue that same method that most people make a mistake on, they'll go fillet, and they'll go, okay, yeah, that's the same radius, and it's 2 because it's pointing into it. And if I do this fillet, you're going to see that that kind of looks a little bit kind of bumped out here. So that's not actually correct, and it doesn't really look really great in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And the proper way of doing that is either to figure out the fillet, or you can use the offset command. And remember, the offset distance is going to be 1. And then when I offset that, that gives me that more smooth contour shape that I was looking for, right? So that's kind of one of those little drafting secrets of how you can make your drawing look a lot better there. let me go ahead and delete that. And another thing, I'm just going to go back and use the fillet command and show you that fillet with a radius of 3 is exactly the same thing. Now, using the fillet command is that it will go ahead and trim those extra lines for you. All right. Let's go ahead and finish this by go ahead and putting a line going from this endpoint to that endpoint. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And next, I want to mirror this going across. So I'm just going to go to the mirror command, and I'm going to select all of these objects here. So I'm going to select those two lines, those two arcs, these two lines, and then that one vertical line. Go ahead and hit enter. And now I just need 2 points along the center of this circle here, right? So I can choose that quadrant and then that center. And go ahead and hit enter. We're going to answer no to that question since we do want to keep the source. All right, some more stuff that I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and trim this off. And so I'm just kind of trimming off these extra portions here. And as you can see, most of this shape is already done for us, right? So this is the front view of this shape. It has our radius on there, and then we do have the tabs. We can actually locate these circles now, or we can locate them whenever we create the top view. I'm going to go ahead and create the top view next. So I'm just going to go back to the draw command, and then I'm going to use a construction line or an X line, make it vertical, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on that endpoint, this one, this endpoint, and I'm kind of working my way around here, right? This endpoint here, this one here. And then I'm also going to go ahead and knock out the center ones as well, right? So I'm going to get that endpoint, that one, and this one. Okay. So that should be more than enough lines of what we have to create the top view. Let's draw a line going straight across here. Let me give myself a little bit more room. Just draw a line, maybe about, yeah, that looks good to me. All right. The offset thickness of this is going to be 6. So I'm just going to offset 6, enter, and I'm going to go ahead and select this line here and click above it. All right, to get rid of these lines quickly, you may have seen me use this command before, but it's called EXTrim, and you have to type it in. So I'll type in EXTrim. Once you hit enter, go ahead and click this line, click above it, then just hit the enter button on your keyboard. Select this line here, click below it, go ahead and hit enter again. I'm going to select this line here. Click to the right, go ahead and hit enter. And then I'm going to select this line here and click to the left. All right, so now I have all of the lines that I need, right? Some of these lines are actually going to be hidden lines, and some of these other ones are kind of tangential lines. Now, normally we don't see some of the tangential lines when we're dealing with doing this in a 2D drawing. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase these two lines here. I really don't need them, but they will show up as, you know, tangential lines if you're doing any kind of 3D program or something along that line. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of more things of this. Let's go ahead and draw a line going right down the middle here. All right, so right here in the middle of this, we have some kind of offset here. And if you remember looking at the isometric, that's actually cut out from there. So I'm just going to go to the offset command. The total thickness of that cutoff is 4. So we're going to divide that by 2 by making it 2. So 2 is my offset distance. I'm just going to offset this line going both directions too. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the trim command. So I'll trim this off. And I'm just going to kind of work this around going that direction. Get these inside lines here. And do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'll trim off these two lines here. And then get rid of that. All right. Next thing I have is I have a couple of circles, and they're located 2.75 to the inside here, right? So we can do that in 2 steps. Let's go ahead and delete this line here as well. All right, so I'm just going to draw a line. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways that if you didn't know how to track this. So I can draw a line going this direction, 2.75. Then I can go ahead and place a circle with a diameter. Click here. And this circle has a diameter of 3. Now that's one way of doing it if you didn't know how to use any kind of tracking. Let's go ahead and delete that line there. The other way is to use the OSnap tracking. So I can go to circle, center, diameter, touch. Once I get the green tracking lines, make sure those tracking lines are active. Then I can type in 2.75, go ahead and hit enter. and then I can type in the diameter, which is 3. All right, and the last thing I need to do to this top view is I need to go ahead and put those fillets that are located on these corners. So I'm just going to go to the fillet command. Radius, it's going to be 2, enter. And then I have more than one, so I'm going to choose the multiple option. And then we're just going to simply go ahead and fillet all of these corners, right? Now, one other little neat trick is that I could have joined those lines together, and then I could have used a fillet and then tell it to fillet the polyline, right? So that's kind of one of those other neat tricks. All right, so now we have 2 of our views drawn that we need. Now I'm going to show you kind of an old school method here, which was called using a miter line, right? And the only reason I'm showing you that is I don't think I've ever shown you that in any other videos. The benefit of using the miter line is that this distance between here and here will be exactly the same as this distance from here to here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and show you that, and I know I'm missing hidden lines that are going on here right now, but we'll come back and put those on here in a second. The way a miter line works is that I have to create a 45-degree line from basically this corner of where these 2 parts meet, and then I can track these lines off of it as well as this line to create my shape that's located here. So the first thing I need to do is create the miter line. I'm going to use a construction line. I'm going to choose angle. I'm going to type in 45, go ahead and hit enter. And what I need to do is I need to track, so I'm just going to touch that endpoint. And then I'm going to touch this midpoint. And once these 2 come in line with each other, I'll do a left click here and then hit escape. So there's my miter line that I need. All right, let's kind of figure out how this miter line thing works. And hopefully at the end of you seeing me do this, you kind of got a little understanding for it. Now, I can draw this shape just outright and then measure that distance and then do all of that other stuff. But miter lines are useful when you don't have to worry about that. Let's go and choose a construction line. Let's choose horizontal. And then I'm going to go ahead and track the horizontal lines that I need off of my miter line here, right? So I'm just going to go from that endpoint to that endpoint, right? And then I'm trying not to clutter it up with too much stuff, but I'm just going to go with these lines here. And then I think I may be able to get away with actually these 2 lines here as well. So I got quite a few miter lines going here. Now these lines, wherever they intersect with this angled line, is where I'm going to create a vertical line. So I'm going to go back to the draw, construction line, and then I'm going to choose vertical. Wherever these intersections are is where I'm going to go ahead and place a vertical construction line. All right. So now this projected exactly where my shape would be. Now I'm going to use this view to line it up with that one. So I'm going to go back to construction line, choose horizontal, and then I'm just going to click at these endpoints here. All right, so everything I need to create now is going to be at this shape. All right, so let's go ahead and start trimming some of this stuff out. Let's go to the trim command. And then I'm going to use some cutting edges here, just so I can kind of trim this a little bit more efficient. My cutting edges will be these 4 lines here. So those are my trimming edges. Go ahead and hit enter after you've done that. And then what I can do is I can simply just draw a fence going straight down here. And I'm just clicking. 1 click going up this way and 1 click going that way, right? Let's go ahead and hit escape on that. Here's my shape that I need, right? Let's go ahead and get rid of our miter line. I think I'm actually done with that. Okay. So I will delete the miter line. All right. So these inside lines here are actually my circles. So I'm going to start off by trimming those out first. Well, let me go ahead and put one more line on here before I do that, and then it'll make it trim much more efficiently. I'm just going to draw a line going from this endpoint here, going straight across. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim that line off. Okay. So I'm going to start off by trimming off these lines here, right? Because those are going to be my circles. So let's go ahead and use the trim command. And I always like to start from the top and kind of walk them down. And then I have my circles that are here at the bottom. These inside lines here happen to be the inside lines that are showing here, right? Well, we're only going to see those there at the top. So I'm just going to trim off these portions here, and I'm just going to walk them up to here. All right, let's go ahead and take a look on the inside of this one. This line here is going to trim here, and I'm also not going to have a gap here. So that's going to trim there. These lines on the inside here actually are hidden lines, right? So let's go ahead, and I think we got all of that view created for us. Let's go ahead and finish out this view here. We do have a line that goes across going here to here. Let's go ahead and trim this portion off. So I'm going to trim between here. And this is another hidden surface. Let's go ahead and get rid of these lines here. So I'm going to select them and delete them. And then I'm going to go ahead and project in my circles at the bottom here. So I'll go ahead and use a construction line. That's vertical. And then I'll go ahead and select the quadrants of my circles. Okay. All I need to do here is trim at the bottom of this. I can use the EX trim. That'll be the more efficient way to go on this one. So EX trim. I can select this line here, click above it. And I'm just going to keep hitting the enter button on my keyboard just so I can kind of bypass, keep typing that in. Back to enter. Select that line there and above it. And then one more enter. Select this bottom line here. And then click below it. All right. So now I have all of my shape drawn. Let's go ahead and kind of help finish this out a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and create the layers that I need. I'm going to go to the layer command. Let's go to new. We're going to create one that's called hidden. So I'm just going to type in HID. I'm going to click the drop down here. The next one is going to be center. So I have that one as well. And then let's make one that's just call it dimension. So DIM. And I'm just kind of short abbreviating these. All right, so I have a hidden one, a center, and a dimension one. All right. On the hidden one, let's go and select the word continuous, load. I'm going to scroll down till I find hidden 2. Hit OK. Then select hidden 2, and then hit OK. Go to the center one, select the word continuous, load, scroll down till you find center 2, hit OK, and then select center 2, and then hit OK. So now those are created. On the hidden layer, go ahead and select the color. I'm just going to make that one red, since that will show up really nicely. On the center ones, let's go ahead and make that a cyan color. And then for my dimensions, let's go ahead and make it magenta. So I'm going to select that one, and then I'll choose the magenta one. Hit OK. Let's go ahead and close this. So now all of these hidden lines, I'm just going to go ahead and select those and put them on the right layer. So I'm selecting these little lines here. And also remember that these are not going to show up as kind of hidden lines yet, because I have not set up any kind of line type scale or anything of that nature. So once I'm done selecting those, I'm just going to put them on that hidden layer. Zoom out, and I don't think I have any here. I'm going to save my center layers and my center marks and my dimensions for when I get to that portion. All right. So this is everything that we need to create the 2D portion of it, right? So at this point, we're going to go into creating the isometric now. This is going to be the longest part of this video. I already know it. It's probably going to take us, I would guess, 20 minutes to get this done. So if you need a break, go ahead and take it now. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started on doing this isometric. All right, so I'm just going to kind of take a look on this side. First thing I need to do is tell AutoCAD that I want to use isometric. So I'm going to select this icon here. Remember that when we're creating isometrics, we have to use the ellipse command, and I have to type that in. So I'm going to go to EL, hit enter, and then I get the ISO circle option to appear. So I'll go to ISO circle, and I'm also starting off in isometric left. I'll click here. The radius of that, 7.5. Let's do the exact same thing again. So EL, enter. And then I'm just going to type in I, enter, to speed things up. I'll click the center here. Kind of give myself a little preview and type in 6.5. Like we did with the other one, we're going to draw a line. So I'm just going to go to the line command. I'm going to start from this center, and I'm going to go out this way. The reason I'm doing this is that I don't have a quadrant on these isometric circles here, right? So I might as well go ahead and draw a line also going this direction. So I'm going to draw a line going this one. Now I'm going to delete those circles here in a little bit anyway. Let's go back to the line command, and at this intersection I'm going to go down 8.5, and then I'm going to go up toward this way to the left 8.5. I'll come up a distance of 1, and I'll come back this direction, right? And that's where I'm kind of going to stop at. I'll do the exact same thing here on the other side. So I'm starting at the inside intersection here. Go down 8.5, coming down this direction 8.5. I'm going to go up a distance of 1, and then I'm just going to come back this direction, right? All right, next I'm going to go ahead and draw a line coming down here. So I'm just going to do the line command. I'm going to come down from that intersection going straight down that direction. Likewise, I'm going to do it again. So line at this intersection and come straight down. All right, let's go ahead and delete these lines. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim this portion out. So let's go to trim. And we're going to trim here and here, and as well as getting rid of these two. Okay, let's go to fillet command. Let's go ahead and set our radius to 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and place my fillet here to here. I'll go ahead and hit the enter button and then do another fillet here to here. All right. The reason why I can't put a radius on those fillets is because remember that this is an isometric. So the traditional fillet command will not work. So if you did use the traditional fillet command, it's going to look a little kind of goofy or kind of lopsided. All right, the way that we're going to create these fillets using isometric circles is that I got to kind of create that shape if this is going to make sense to you. So I'm going to go with a line. I'm going to go down, and I'm just going to type in the radius of that iso circle. So I'm going to go to 2 that way, and I'm just going to create a box. 2. I'm going to go up 2, and then I'm going to close it. So C, enter. All right. So the way that this works is that this is going to be the center of my iso circle, right? I can go ahead and create that iso circle either here, or I can place those on here. And I think I'm going to go with the option of placing them on here just so I can give you a visual. So I'm going to select these 2 lines. I'm going to choose copy. I'm going to go from this endpoint, and then I'm going to place it at that endpoint. Let's go to escape, and then we're going to go back to the copy command. This time I'm going to select these 2 lines. Go ahead and hit enter there. Go from that endpoint to that endpoint. Now all of this circle is there for is just to give me where the center of that is. So when I choose an ellipse, iso circle, it's asking me for a radius. I can pick that endpoint, and then I can place it at that endpoint. Do the exact same thing here at the top. So I'm going to go back to the ellipse, iso circle. So this time I'm just going to type in I enter. Select that endpoint here, then select that endpoint. Let's go ahead and put the other circle there. So ellipse, then type in I, enter, go from this center, and then I can kind of preview this, and remember that the radius of that circle is 3. Same thing on this one, so ellipse, EL, enter, I, enter, select this endpoint, kind of give yourself a preview, and then type 3, enter, right? So that's how we create those iso circles there, or the fillets there, right? Let's go ahead and delete those reference lines that we do have there, as we don't need those anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. Now all I need to do is go ahead and trim this, and now we'll get those fillets going correctly. So I'm just going to trim between these shapes here, and we're going to make it look like so. Okay. Let's do the exact same thing here on the other side. So I'm going to trim off the big portions first. Then I like to trim these gaps here. And then I'll trim off my edges of my original part here. Alright, so once I have this kind of created, right? I do have what I needed created. Now I'm going to kind of extend this over, or extrude if we was talking in 3D terms. But we're doing this in isometric, so I'm just going to select here. I'm going to switch to isometric top. I'm going to choose copy, and I'm going to select all of this. Go ahead and hit enter. I'm just going to select here and go this direction and type in 6. Enter. Now you want to make sure that you do have your ortho turned on, right? That way you can keep all of this stuff in line. So it's really crucial that you have ortho turned on. Let's go ahead and draw a line that's going from here, going across to here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this line in some other locations, right? So I'm going to choose copy, select this line, go ahead and hit enter. I'm going to click on this endpoint, and I'm going to place it at that endpoint. And then these are those tangential circles that I was talking about before. So I'm just going to select that endpoint here, and then this one. I'm going to kind of work my way around this, right? I do have a tangential circle here. Let's go ahead and click here. It's going to be one at the quadrant that's located here, right? So, and I should have a quadrant that's going to appear here. And then I do have one that's going here. I'm not going to worry about the one that's underneath it, but I do have one that's going to show up right here. All right, so next thing I need to do is start trimming this to make it look like what I need it to look like before I start doing any kind of cuts to it. And I did forget one more tangential one now that I'm looking at it. Let's go ahead and place that one. So I'm going to copy this line here, go ahead and hit enter from that endpoint to that quadrant. Yes, that's what we need. All right, so let's go and use the trim command, right? And I'm going to start by working on the inside of this one. So I'm going to trim this portion off. And I'm just kind of trimming this all the way around to here. Likewise on this side, so I'm going to trim off to here, and I will see this portion, but I won't see the inside portion here. And you can see it's just kind of working all of this stuff back. And as I keep trimming this, you'll see the shape start to come and form. I don't need this line or this one either. I do need here. All right, so this would be great if this is all we had. But remember that we do have a cutout that's happening inside of here, right? The benefit of that is that we do have this tangential edge that is showing here, and I might need to actually show it on the other side here. So let's go ahead and copy that, as we know that it will show on the other side. So I'm going to copy, select that object there, go from this endpoint right over to that endpoint. All right, in order to make that cutout, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these two. I'll go to copy, pick a base point here, and I'm going to send this over a distance of 1, enter. And then I'm going to also send it over a distance of 5, enter. Okay, go ahead and hit escape. So the first thing that I do see is that I'm going to draw a line. So L, enter. I'm going to go from that endpoint to that endpoint. Likewise on this one, but I'm not going to see it at all, right? So this whole inside line here, I don't think it shows up until it appears here on the other side. Let's go ahead and start trimming off some of this so that way we can see it a little bit more clearly. Let's go to trim. And then I'm going to trim off that portion here. And then that portion. On this side here, we're going to trim off that portion here. And we're going to also trim off this portion here. All right, let's go ahead and hit escape. And what I need to do is I need to locate this line here, right? So I'm looking at this line, and you'll see that this doesn't appear until it crosses over to this line. So by me looking at that, I can go to trim, and then I can start off by at that point, and I'm just going to trim here and kind of walk this all the way back around because I don't need to see it anymore. Right? So now we have that view. And you can also see that this line here, it's going to stop right at that tangent point there. So I'm just going to trim that off here. So I'm going to trim off to here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to trim it off there. Now this is a gap in between here, so I'm just going to go ahead and take away that line there. And you're going to see that this part is in front of everything, so I'm just going to trim off right between there. And I'm going to trim off here as well as here. All right, and now you can see actually that shape has kind of taken form to what we need it to do. Let's go ahead and hit escape. we're going to select one of these lines again, preferably this line here. And then I'm going to choose copy. I'm going to go from this endpoint, and I'm just going to select at that endpoint and also at that endpoint. Let's go ahead and draw a few more lines here. So I'm going to draw a line going from here to here. And then let's go ahead and finally finish trimming out the rest of this. So I'm going to trim off here. Let me zoom in a little bit closer to get that portion and then that portion. Here at the bottom, I'm going to trim off that portion. All right, we do have our opening there. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and construct our circles on the inside of here. So I'm just going to simply draw a line going from this midpoint, this direction, 2.75. I'll do the exact same thing here on the other side. So I'm going to draw a line going from that midpoint, going this direction, 2.75. Go ahead and hit enter. I'm going to zoom into this one, and then I'm going to create an ISO circle. So EL, enter, then I enter. I'm going to select this circle here, or this endpoint. I'm going to start kind of previewing it, but I need this to be a diameter, so I'm going to select diameter here. And then I'll type in the diameter of this circle, which is 3. After that, I'm going to go to the copy command, and then I'm going to go ahead and select that circle, enter, and I'm going to pick from this endpoint going down to this endpoint. All right, let's go ahead and trim this a little bit more. So I'm just going to trim. I'm going to take away that portion there and then this one. All right, so with these, I'm going to copy these two circles, and I'm going to go from this endpoint, and I'm going to simply place it at that endpoint. Let's go ahead and get rid of that line there since we don't need that anymore. So I'm selecting and hit the delete button on my keyboard. Then I'm going to go back to the trim command, and I'm just going to get rid of these parts here because they will not show past that surface. Let's go ahead and get rid of that line there. All right, and now we're ready for the last thing. We do have some fillets on this edge. So let's go ahead and put those fillets on here. Remember, like we did the first one when we did these fillets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box, and those have a radius of 2. So I'm just going to start by creating a line. I'm going this way, and remember that I'm still an isometric top. So I'm going to go 2 that way, 2. Let's see, I actually hit the escape button. Let's go in line going that direction, 2 enter, 2 enter, and since I broke this command, I'll go ahead and select this endpoint and then hit escape. All right, so what I have here is I have the center location of what I need, right? And it might be a little bit more beneficial in this case to go ahead and draw my ISO circles along this view. So I'm going to go to ellipse, I enter, and that stands for my ISO circle. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to go to here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and place this first ISO circle, which is going to be located here. So I'm going to select this circle. I'll go to move from this endpoint to that endpoint. Let's go ahead and trim this now. So I'm going to go to trim. I'm going to start trimming this around. I'm also going to trim off these 2 lines. Okay. And I'm going to leave this line here for right now because I'm going to use it as a reference. So I'm just going to go to copy command. I'll go ahead and select this line here, hit enter, and I'm going to go from this endpoint down to that endpoint. Let's go ahead and copy this line. And with this line, I'm going to place them at this intersection here, and then at that intersection there. Then we can go to the trim command and get rid of all the other stuff, right? So let's trim off that line that we just copied here, and then get rid of those portions. All right, so we're going to have to do this 3 more times, all right? So the next one is going to be located on this side. So I'm going to type in EL, I enter, select this endpoint, and then I'm going to place it at that endpoint. All right, so now with this one, I have located where that endpoint is at, so that's going to be this one in the back. Let's go ahead and select this circle. Let's go ahead and move it from this endpoint to that endpoint. Like we did before, trim. And we're just going to trim this around. Copy. Let's go ahead and select our arc that we just created. And then we're going to go from this endpoint down to this endpoint here. I'm going to go ahead and take this line here. And I want to select it and go to copy. Let's go from this endpoint here. And we have an endpoint here. And on this one, we're going to go to that tangential edge here, which is going to be at this quadrant or midpoint. All right. Let's go ahead and trim off the rest of this stuff. So I'm just going to trim that piece back to where it hits that tangential line there. Let's go ahead and get rid of this line here. And we're going to trim off this portion here, that line there, and then that one. All right. So the next one I need to create. So we created on that quadrant and then on this one. Let's go ahead and use ellipse. ISO circle. So I enter. I'm going to select this endpoint here. And I'm going to place it at that endpoint. Let's go to move. Select your circle. Enter. Let's go from that endpoint here and place it at that endpoint. Let's go ahead and trim off the portion around here. So trim. All right. Escape from that. Go to copy. Select your arc. Enter. Go from this endpoint going down to this endpoint. Then I'm going to select this line here. I'm going to copy this one from this endpoint going to this intersection here. And then I'm going to choose that quadrant here, or midpoint. It may show up as a midpoint. Go ahead and hit escape, and then use the trim command to get rid of all of the extra stuff. So I'm just going to trim off all the way around to that point. Let's go ahead and trim these lines off here. And then here. All right, and then the final one we have is going to create an arc that is going around that portion. So what we're going to do is type in EL, enter, I enter. I'm going to place it at this endpoint and place it at that endpoint. I'm going to go to the move command. I'm going to select my ISO circle that I just created. Go ahead and hit enter. Place it from that endpoint to this endpoint. All right, the good news on this one is that it's not going to show much. So we're just going to be able to trim right from here. And I'm going to trim off going right around here. I have a little piece in between there. All right, we have that trimmed. I'm going to get rid of there, here, and here. All right, let's go ahead and get rid of our circle here. Go ahead and hit delete. And now we do have our shape. Everything that we needed to create, even the tangential edges. So if you did this in 3D, you will see these tangential edges that's going to appear. Now you can turn those off and it will make the shape look a little bit more realistic. But in this case, that is done. All right. So from this point, we're going to go over and start doing some 2D drafting. And I know most of the time I use a B-size title block, but on this case, I wanted to use an A-size title block. So I'm going to show you that the steps are exactly the same. And one other thing that I want to also show you that what we're going to do with this is that we're not going to use the annotation scale. So we're going to use this one using the old standard way of doing this, right? All right, so let's go ahead and start working on that portion. Let's go ahead and get it out of the isometric. I'm just going to zoom the extents and take a look at everything I have here. And then I'm going to move this over close. So let's go to move this over. So from this endpoint going somewhere near this, right? I'm going to turn off my ortho now so I get a little free range. All right, let's go ahead and look at all of this. So these are the views that I need to create. So I have my front view, top view, and a right side view. And I also have an isometric view. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create an A-size title block, right? I'm going to start off by using a rectangle. The lower left corner will be at 0, 0. Go ahead and hit enter, and remember the dimensions for an A size drawing is going to be 11, 8.5. Let's go ahead and zoom into here. I'm going to use the offset command, give it a distance of 0.25. Go ahead and select here, come down to here, escape, select both of your rectangles, then choose the word create. Once I have create, go ahead and select, give it a name. I'm just going to call this TB, short for title block. My lower left corner is already sitting at that 0, 0. I do want to go ahead and convert them to a block, so they will be, and this is done in inches. Go ahead and hit OK. And then you should have your shape here. Go ahead and select it, right click, and choose Properties. The property window should appear. And then I'm going to choose a scale in here. So I'm just going to tell it 8. And I think 8 should be big enough to go ahead and place this in. Let's go ahead and escape from here. Now we're going to kind of move some of this stuff around. So I'm only going to select my isometric view here. I'm just going to move this. Let's go ahead and pick a point out here so I can kind of move this up in the corner here. Next, let's go ahead and move our regular shape here. So I'm just going to move all 3 of these. Make sure that you don't select anything from here. Hit enter. Kind of move this up along here. Alright, now this should be enough room around this to create all of my dimensions. So the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start putting in my center marks and stuff of that nature. First command I'm going to use is called center layer. Enter. And then I want to put that on the center layer, right? Next thing I need to do is I need to tell AutoCAD the scale factor that I'm using. So I'm going to type in LTS, and that stands for line type scale. Go ahead and hit enter, and remember that this has to match the exact same scale as your drawing. So my drawing is scaled up at 8 times, so therefore this number is going to equal 8. If you look at your line types now, you're going to see that these are now dotted lines, right? Because I just now increased the line type scales of these. One of the things that you could do is if you wanted to see that little dash in between these, is you can select it, go back to your properties window, and then you would adjust this line type scale here. And remember that this is a local line type scale. The actual LTS command is a global, so it affects the whole entire drawing. But if I make this something like 0.5, and I'll keep playing with this until I get those dots in between there. And that looks good enough for me. Then from here, I'll go to match properties, select my red line here, and then I'm just going to apply these to all of the other locations of where I have my hidden lines. Alright, and I think we have a few more on my other view here. And let's show it on here as well. Okay, so those represent my hidden lines that are going through this. I already have my center marks adjusted to the right layer. Let's choose the center EXE just for the extension. I'm going to make that extension value 3. Okay, so now when I go to the annotate tab here and I put my center marks on first, I'm going to select this big circle here, select this circle here, and then this one. And then we're going to choose our center marks, right? Sorry, our center lines. So I'm going to go to center line. Let's zoom into here, and I'm going to select these 2 bisecting lines. I'm just going to hit enter on my keyboard to take me back to that last command. I'm just going to go ahead and keep placing them here. I have one here, and then I have one that's sitting right here in the middle of this one. So I'm going to select these 2 outside lines. Now we're going to kind of adjust these. Now you can see that the extensions on these are quite long. So I'll go ahead and select these 2 lines here. Take a look at it in my properties. You can see those extensions are at 3. I might set those both equal to 1. It looks like I didn't get the bottom one. 1, enter. I'm just going to kind of zoom into one of these, right? And I'm still looking at my properties windows. On this one, it's selected at 1. The line type scale, let's go ahead and adjust this. Remember that this is a local. And I'll take a look at 0.5, and I still don't see what I need to see. Let's go a little bit smaller. So 0.25 for these. And remember, I had all of them selected, so all of them should be adjusted to that right size. Okay, so our center marks are on, and now the last thing I need to do is start dealing with my dimensions. So here underneath the Annotate tab, I want all of my dimensions to go on the right layer. So here in the drop down where it says Use Current, I'm going to select here, and I'll go ahead and choose the dimension layer. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and set up my dim style, which is going to be selected by this drop down here. Once I've done that, I'm going to use the standard size. Remember, so I'm going to be adjusting everything manually. So I'm going to go to Standard, choose Modify. I always like to work my way from the right to the left. So I'm going to go with my Primary Units tab. I'm just going to go ahead and suppress the trailing zeros. Underneath the fit, this needs to match whatever my line type scale is. So I'm going to tell it that this number is 8. Underneath the text, let's go ahead and shrink our text down just a little bit. So that's 0.125. Underneath our symbols and arrows, we're going to go ahead and tell it that we have no center marks needed since we already done that for it. Go ahead and hit OK. Standard is the correct or the current style that I'm going to use. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And then let's start going ahead and putting our dimensions on. So I'm going to use a linear dimension from that endpoint to this one. And you can see that that number is 24.6, and I actually meant to use the overall. Let's go ahead and delete this one. Go back to linear. And I meant to go from this endpoint to this endpoint. Give yourself enough room so you can put the other dimensions. So I'm going to go back to linear. I'm going to select this endpoint first because I want that dimension to be on the outside. So remember that AutoCAD goes from the last place you clicked to that endpoint, and then I'll place here. Back to linear, so I'm going to go this endpoint here to that endpoint, and I'm going to bring it up. I'm just going to touch that endpoint, and you'll see that it will track and stay in line with it. Go ahead and do a left click there. I'm going to go ahead and place a linear dimension from this endpoint here to that endpoint, and that's going to be 3. Let's go ahead and put our radial dimensions on here. So radius dimension here. And go ahead and place your diameter dimension on here. Okay. Now I can go ahead and start labeling some of this stuff. I noticed that this applies to both of these circles, so I'm just going to double click this dimension. Then I'll use the arrow keys to get back to the end of that. Go ahead and hit enter, and then type in 2 places. 2 space PLCS, right? I'll go ahead and hit close on this one. You see it's going to kick it down to the bottom of that. It's kind of sitting on the outside, so let's see if I got enough room to move everything. So I'm just going to go to move, and I'm going to move all of this over except for my isometric, right? So I'm going to go to move. And I want to put a window around this, or you can use a window polygon if you ever used this before. It's called WP. So I'm in the window command, in the move command, and I'm just going to type in WP. And then what it allows me to do is just go ahead and click and create a polygon that goes around this. Go ahead and hit enter. Enter one more time. Now it's asking me for a base point. I'm just going to do a left click here and kind of move all of this stuff over to here. All right, next let's go back to here. Let's double click on this one. And just like we did with the other dimension, just use the arrow key to make sure you're at the end. Hit enter, 4 space places. I'm going to close this one. Then I'm just going to select this dimension here. Once again, use the arrow keys to make sure I'm at the end. Type in 2 space PLCS. Alright, this view is done. Let's go ahead and take a look at my next view down here at the bottom. Let's go back to the linear dimension. So I'm going to select linear here. Go from this endpoint to this edge. Place that dimension. Go ahead and put my radial dimensions on here. So radius, select the inside one here, go ahead and place it there. Go back to the radius one and place my other dimension along here. Let's go ahead and put our other dimensions on. And these are linear dimensions, so selecting the drop down here, linear. I'm just going to go from this bottom edge here to that end point. Place that dimension. And instead of keep going back up here, if it's the last command you use, you can always hit the enter button on your keyboard just to speed up things. So I'm just going to keep going down to here. I'm just going to hit enter on my keyboard to add another linear dimension, right? Click that endpoint to this endpoint. Come and touch that endpoint, and then make sure that they're in line with each other. Do a left click there. With this one, I want my dimension to be at the top. So when I use the linear dimension, I'm going to select here first, and then here secondly, and that's going to place my dimension at the top. And then I need to place a radial dimension on this. So I'll go to radius, go ahead and select here. And then it's okay if you get the little weird little extension there, right? All right, so both of these, I need to go ahead and change this one, right? So I'm just going to double click on it. Should open it up in the editor. Make sure you arrow over. So I'm using the right arrow. Go ahead and hit enter. I want this to say 2 places at the end of it. Do a close on this one. Escape. Then I want you to select this dimension. So make sure you hit escape first. Otherwise it'll bring you back in the edit dimension. Go over to your properties. I'm looking for the extension, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. All right, last dimensions that I need to do is going to be on this view here. Let's go back to our linear dimension. I want my 6 to be on the other side, so I'm going to select this endpoint first to this one. Go ahead and place a few more linear dimensions on this, so I'm just hitting enter on my keyboard. I'm going to place this one here. I have a linear dimension going between here. I have a thickness one kind of showing here. And then the last dimension that I need is going to be the 16. So I'm just going to go back to enter, go to here, and place that one. Okay, now remember that this is a reference dimension, right? So I'm just going to double click it. I'm going to use the left arrow to make sure I'm in front of it. I'm going to use the parentheses in front of it, so the opening parentheses. Then I'm going to use the right arrow to get to the end of this. And then I'll choose the one that's behind it. Go ahead and hit close. Escape. And then I'm just going to kind of zoom the extent. So I double click the middle mouse wheel, or you can select here, right? So hopefully this kind of was super useful to you, especially with the isometric. Some of that stuff is really neat and, you know, fun to draw, as I do like doing isometrics, but remember that it's kind of one of those dying arts, especially with the 3D softwares being so much more proficient and easy. But if you had to create this in 2D, this is one of those examples that show you exactly everything that you need to do. Remember that we used an A-size title block on this one, and we used the standard method. Always with the standard method, make sure your line type scale and that your dimension scale match. That's going to be your super important thing about doing this. Now, if I had any other text, remember that using the standard method, we also have to go ahead and do multiplication and some other stuff of that nature. So I may run across that in some of my other videos, but if you go back and look at some of the other standard videos I've used or done, you can see that I did the multiplication, and those will explain how to do that, right? So as always, if you like these videos, go ahead and probably leave me a comment. Show me anything that I did wrong or I may not have done. I know someone asked me about the 3D stuff, and when I get to the 3D stuff, so in some of your computers, this base is not showing up. What I would advise you to do sometimes on this is just go to this blank space here, do a right click, and then go to show palettes and make sure that the word view is checked. So that might be the one way or that's turned off on your machine, right? So hopefully this was informative to you, and always, you know, if you like these videos, go ahead and subscribe and keep watching them and tell me if there's something else you want to see. And also, when I do this in Inventor, we're going to be doing sheet metal. So I just want to make sure I let you know that as well, right? All right, so go ahead and enjoy your day, and I will see you in the next video.